विदेशी छात्रों के बीच राहुल गांधी का वीडियो। इस वीडियो में छात्रों ने राहुल गांधी से क्या सवाल पूछे। तो राहुल गांधी इस वक्त 10 दिन की विदेश यात्रा पर हैं। कोलंबिया पहुंचे, वहां के राष्ट्रपति से मुलाकात की। विस्तार से अगर आप चाहें तो मेरा ये वीडियो देख सकते हैं। सब कुछ डिटेल्स मैं आपको इस वीडियो में बता चुकी हूँ। इस वीडियो में मैं आपको दिखाऊंगी वो बातचीत जो राहुल गांधी ने विदेशी छात्रों के बीच कही। इस बातचीत को सुनना इसलिए ज़रूरी है दोस्तों, क्योंकि अमूमन हमारे देश के नेताओं से हम राजनीति की बातों के अलावा कुछ और कम ही सुन पाते हैं, लेकिन विदेश में यूनिवर्सिटी के छात्र, वहाँ के विश्वविद्यालय के छात्रों के बीच, खास तौर पर वो छात्र जो इंजीनियरिंग के छात्र हैं, उनके बीच राहुल गांधी ने न केवल अपनी विदेश नीति के बारे में विस्तार से बताया, बल्कि ये भी बताया कि चीन कैसे दुनिया भर में इतना बड़ा एक पावर सेंटर बन गया और अब आने वाला भविष्य भारत में वो किस तरह से देखते हैं। दोस्तों, यूनिवर्सिटी EIA का ये वीडियो है। इस वीडियो में सुनिए राहुल गांधी क्या बोल रहे हैं।
I think, of course, India has tremendous potential. It's 1.4 billion people, the size, bigger than China now in terms of population. But India is a completely different system than China. So whereas China is very centralized, uniform, India is decentralized and has multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple traditions, multiple religions. So India is a much more complex system, and India's strengths, which exist, are not necessarily China's strengths. They're different. So they're big systems, but they're different and they operate differently. India also has a very old tradition, spiritual tradition, and a thought system. Very profound and old ideas that are very useful in today's world. The idea of non-violent political action comes from deep within Indian tradition. Mahatma Gandhi was a modern exponent of that. So there's a lot that India can offer to the world in terms of our tradition, our way of thinking, information technology, our engineering capability, our healthcare system. So I'm very optimistic about India, but at the same time, there are also fault lines within the Indian structure. There are risks that India has to overcome.
Which are those risks that you see?
The single biggest risk is the attack on democracy that is taking place in India. Because India has multiple religions, multiple traditions, multiple languages, and India actually is a conversation between all its people. And different traditions, different religions, different ideas require space. And that the best method for creating that space is the democratic system. And currently there is a wholesale attack on the democratic system in India. So that's a risk. This other big risk is risk between different conceptions, different parts of the country, right? Some 16, 17 different languages, different religions. So allowing these different traditions to thrive, giving them space to express themselves is very important for a country like India. We can't do what China does, which is suppress people and run an authoritarian system. Our design just will not accept that.
Now move to another idea. From India, what's your view about a country like Colombia? You came here, there must be some reason for that, but what's the kind of view that you have from India to a country like Colombia in South America?
I've been here 2 days. It's quite fascinating. There's obviously a very dynamic political contest taking place, and the country seems to be quite polarized between different political ideas. I quite like what I see as the spirit of the Colombian people, which is quite resilient and relaxed. They don't seem aggressive, it seems, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems that they tend to deal with problems and take life as it comes, and that's quite a good way of thinking about it. I like the diversity here. I've never seen so many new fruits as I saw over the last 2 days. So, yeah.
Talking about one of the things that you have said about how do you see humanity and politics in the world, there is a concern about polarization in the world. How do you see that? How to deal with polarization? How leaders as you can introduce a new view in the world in which polarization maybe is not the right way?
I mean, from our perspective, I can only talk about what we are seeing in India. Large country like India is struggling, even though we have good economic growth, we are struggling to create jobs for our people. And the reason we are struggling to create jobs for our people is because we are not actually producing, we are not manufacturing. We are a service-based economy, and large countries require a manufacturing base, require the act of production to employ its people. So for us, having a world where China produces everything means that we struggle to employ our people. So for us, fundamentally important thing is to start production and start to compete with China on producing material goods. That is central. A country like India simply cannot manage if it doesn't do that. Most of the people, for example, who are creating the polarization in the United States with Mr. Trump are people who have lost their manufacturing jobs, right? It's the collapse of US manufacturing that has left a huge number of people in the United States and in India and in Europe without jobs. And that's a volatile cocktail, right? So I think what's really important is China has demonstrated to the world how you do production in a non-democratic environment. We cannot do that. We are a democratic environment. We have to have a democratic structure. So for us, what's interesting is, can we develop a model of production, a model of manufacturing that is competitive with China, but in a democratic environment? And that's where a lot of the conversation between countries like the United States and India, Western Europe, is heading.
Once I was in the World Economic Forum with Ricardo Hausmann, he's professor from University of Harvard, and he told me, and he said, Colombia is more India, less China.
Yeah.
Saying that Colombia is more human talent, and that we have to develop the human talent services, for example, software production and so on, rather than industry. Would you agree on that with Ricardo Hausmann?
No, because, look, there is a place for services. But in a country like India, high-tech software services is at best 1%, 2%, 3% of the population. Right? It's a very small number of people who are actually employed in the software industry in India compared to the massive size of our country. India simply cannot succeed economically only on services. We are very good at services, and it's a very important part of the future. It's a very important part of the economy. But you cannot do, a large country cannot do only services. Country like Singapore maybe can do it, you know. But large country like India can't do it. And by the way, I mean, he's a professor in Harvard. He's finding out that America can't do it, right? Because the levels of polarization that America is facing are not sustainable. And the entire political conversation in America, what Mr. Trump is proposing is a return to manufacturing, which I don't believe is possible for them, right? But that's what Mr. Trump is proposing. And pretty much any country now will tell you, big country will tell you that, look, having a world where China is the only producer is seriously problematic for us.
There was an article this week in The Economist which says that the one who is winning this war on tariffs is actually China, not the United States. So that China is taking more advantage of the war on tariffs that is happening now in the world.
I mean, I wouldn't classify it as a war. I'd classify it more as a competition. But look, if if you are the globe's biggest producer, right? If you are sending products to the rest of the world, you will be in a very strong position by default. I mean, when the United States was the biggest producer in the world, they had a very strong position, right? So having this network of production, because in the 21st century, it's not just factories, right? Factories were silos, concrete silos. This is a completely different concept. This is a connected production network. And it's not just in China. It extends out of China. The core is in China, but it's in Vietnam, it's in Malaysia, it's in Thailand, it's in Bangladesh. So it's a completely different production system than anything that has been seen before.